I noticed that my father was someone other than your regular everyday go to work father at the age of about, I'd have to say maybe about 7 or 8, when there were always musicians around the house, and there was always music around the house, and he had his guitar, and he didn't go to a regular job. I didn't really know what a regular job was except for what my father did. That's all I knew. I never thought of him as being anything different. That's how I looked at him. This was a job. At that point in time, I didn't really have a concept of a job. I just knew I was at home with my mom and dad. His joy was that he was able to do more for the family. I think it gave him a bit more confidence in what he was doing, because my father was always, he was very consistent in what he did. He said, "This is what I do, and I'm not going to change." And this made him a bit more confident in what he was doing. I noticed the change in the music, because when we were growing up, it was a very, jump, boogie music. But then he began to do the more folkish music. And he made the transition beautifully. I mean, he was just like, it was a flawless transition for him. And that's what I remember in that, is that he would take us to the coffee houses with him to see the performances. It was really a time that was very good for him and very lucrative compared to what he had been doing. He was quite pleased, that people would emulate him and, try to do his music. Of course, he knew that they could never do his music, but it was just very pleasant for him to have someone come and want to do his music. So he was quite pleased with it. Most people who know my father know that he was a very energetic man. And even though he wasn't a young man, it was because this was his passion. That is what gave him the drive to do it. And my father has always, always, always wanted to do his music. So this is what drove him. Us as a family, we didn't see it as something that was hard for him, because he never showed that to us. My father was a very private man. Even within the context of the family, he was a private man. You would never know that he was probably tired. You would never know that he may have been in pain or something like that. So we would have, as children, we would have never, even as young people, young adults, we would have never known that my father was in a struggle trying to provide for the family, because he was always into his music. This was something that he loved. My father's music was definitely an outlet for his inner feelings and the things that were going on in his life. This was this was his life. This was just his whole essence, his music. Uh, I asked him I'd ask him, why he wore his sunglasses, when he performed. And he was saying that sometimes he wears his sunglasses because he cries as he does his music. Because, he's been through a lot. And the things that he's seen, the things that have been done to him, the things that he has experienced. And it hurts. And so the sunglasses were kind of his protection for keeping people away from knowing what he was feeling. The one that he really, really enjoyed working with the most would have been Carlos. I think what he loved about Carlos was just the quiet spirit within him and the just pure honesty. But he enjoyed working with these people. My father loved working with people and singing with people and I guess, collaborating with them. And he really, I think this was a good part of his life, the good portion of his life, working with people who wanted to work with him because of who he was, and just wanting to do his music. He was honored that people wanted to do his music. Now that my father's gone, and really I only consider him physically gone because he will spiritually always be with me. Um, it's when I listen to his music, it's it is like he's just right here with me. He's right there with me. Um, I really have to say that I miss him. I miss him because he is physically gone, and as humans, we're so into tangible and what we can touch and and what we can see. But when I put his music on, it's like you say, he is here with me. He is here with me. Even if his music is not on, he's here with me because he is, I came from his loins, so I truly have a stronger connection than most people who just listen to his music. Um, for me, when I look in the mirror, I can see parts of me that resemble him. So I know that he's not gone. My very first time recording with my father was somewhat kind of intimidating. Even as his daughter, it was intimidating for me because I realized that, who he, this is John Lee, even though he's my father, you know, can you come up to this standard? Can you even get close to that standard? So that was, somewhat uh, hard for me to do. But after, I got past it, it was just fun recording with him because he was always joking. He was a very funny man. He should have also been a comedian along with being a musician. He had this infectious laugh, and he was always playing and always joking. He would call the house and he would disguise his voice on us. So, this was a part of him, the playful John that made you relax when you had to come into a studio with him. He realized this and he put whoever he was working with at ease. Well, I knew my father did not want me to be in the music industry because when we were coming up, he gave piano lessons to my brother and he bought him a piano. Well, I wanted one. I wanted to take lessons too. But he bought me a sewing machine. I will never forget that. Bette Midler says, I'll never forget. you know. So I knew then that he was not thrilled about, us going into the music industry. But my brothers worked with him for a little while, and I think he was disappointed because they did not continue on. They kind of had that, they were like that shooting star, and then all of a sudden it just faded away and they were gone. And that was very disappointing to him because every man would like their sons to follow in their path. Well, he didn't realize his daughter was going to follow in his path and was relentless because I had relentless people helping me. So at first he was not very supportive because I think he was afraid that it was a tough life and that I would quit, that I would become discouraged and quit. And so he told me, he said, well, you've got to crawl, before you walk, you've got to pay your dues, you've got to do this, you've got to do that. And this went on for a while. And one day we were at his house, and it was myself, my father, and Olin, the producer, who is also my husband. And Olin asked my father, he said, I'd like to speak with you. And so they went and they walked to the corner. And when they came back, my father has been helping ever since. He's just been there. He became a very, very supportive person at that point. And I don't know what was said, but you know. But he has been there 100% after that. I think that I would like the world to know that the person that they knew as John Lee Hooker was John Lee Hooker, but was not John Lee Hooker. Um, as a child, I saw the true John Lee Hooker, this very sensitive, very, very very I'm looking for a word. He was very in being non-confrontational. He was like a willow in the wind, you know, blowing every which way, trying to please everyone. And sometimes people would not understand this. And in order to get what they wanted, it didn't matter what it cost of him. This is what I want. And I think that I would like people to know that he was a kind and giving person, not only in his everyday life, but also in his music. He left a legacy here that is just cannot be duplicated. And it was such an eclectic, a real music, straight from his heart, what he did best. And the music was so beautiful, and I think people will listen to it and they say, well, John is playing this, and he's doing that, and he's doing this, and he's doing that. And what it was my father was just doing basically what was inside of him. The very simple, very plain, just honest music. Plain, honest music. No complicated nothing. I mean, it amazes me when people say, well, John did this and he wanted to do this and he tried, you know. But as a child, I saw what he did. He played what was John. All of his music, every song he wrote had a story to go with it. It was something that had happened to him in his life. And he put it to music. And I guess that's what I would want people to know. My father liked the smaller clubs because they were very intimate. And he just loved people. He was just a people person, and he liked the closeness, being close to these people, and receiving that energy that he received from them. He always said he liked the smaller clubs because of the closeness to the people, because he really loved people. He really loved people. And as he got older, and this is in reference to something that you had said, even as he got older, I think his presence became even more mystical to people. I think that's what it was, more mystical. I was, we were talking the other day, Olin and myself, and I was telling him, I says, my father was the coolest man I know. He was. He was just the coolest person I knew. To me, I mean, there was nobody. He epitomizes cool.